Paper was like gold in medieval times.
Oh, not tobacco, sugar.
That everything we thought we knew about the world might turn out to be completely wrong.
Dinosaurs have mesmerized people since they first appeared in museums.
They planned the museum around that dinosaur. They really thought about what was going into the museum when they designed it.
It's hard not to think that the drama of the exhibit didn't enter into their minds.
But for decades, much of what we've seen has been wrong.
I mean, if you look at how we reconstruct hadrosaurs nowadays, the animal looks, essentially completely different.
Now, an ongoing dinosaur renaissance is affecting exhibits around the world.
Everything you see in our shop revolves around building dinosaurs. And it may seem an awful lot for a little bit of bone, but you have to remember these things are priceless. You can't just go to the corner store and buy a hadrosaur.
I think every new museum that opens a fossil exhibition creates a new model, a new step forward, and everybody else tries to learn from what everyone else has done.
There's a certain amount of fear that goes into the job. There's the fear of getting it wrong.
It's a Jurassic journey so dramatic, you won't see dinosaurs the same way again.
Come on in. Welcome to the Jurassic parking lot.
This impressive dinosaur is a Corythosaurus, a hadrosaur with a trademark helmet-crested head. It was mounted for the new wing of the Royal Ontario Museum in 1932 and towered over visitors for more than 70 years. This original mount was so tall, the building was even designed around it.
Well, that wing, as such, the floor of the Queen's Park wing, which was constructed and opened in 1932, was part of a huge addition of the museum that was conceived in about 1929 and built and opened in 1932. That particular floor of that wing has an extra high ceiling to accommodate a particular dinosaur, and that was the big Corythosaurus hadrosaur that they knew was going to be extra tall, because back then they assumed that these guys stood up on their hind legs. And this was a very long dinosaur, so when it stood up on its hind legs, it was going to be very tall, about 17 feet tall when it was finished being mounted. They planned the museum around that dinosaur, and that's not the only thing they planned it around. I really thought about what was going into the museum when they designed it.
The formidable creature was an impressive sight. And when a 5-year-old David Evans saw it for the first time, it was a moment that changed his life.
My uncle actually brought me here when I was about 5 years old and took me around the ROM gallery. And it was here that I saw my first dinosaur skeletons in real life, and that had a real impact on me.
The experience cemented his early passion for fossils and eventually led him to a career in paleontology.
Well, if you walked into the ROM gallery like I did when I was 5, the Corythosaurus was amazing. You would see an animal that was in a squatting pose. The tail would be mostly dragging along the ground. The knees would be rather flexed, and the backbone would be sending the neck and head very high within the rafters. I think that the head was held about 18 feet off the floor. And basically, dinosaurs and paleontology have been with me ever since.
But there is one problem with this exhibit. It's wrong, and the museum has known it for about 30 years.
It's hard not to think that the drama of the exhibit didn't enter into their minds. Putting an 18-foot-tall Tyrannosaurus Rex in an exhibit, or putting the duckbill standing 17 feet tall, is something that would really resonate in the minds of the museum visitors, and it certainly makes for a much more dramatic exhibit. Turns out that's not how the dinosaurs would have stood in their normal stance, in their relaxing posture, how they were walking. The backbones were held essentially horizontal. The legs were much less flexed. They weren't bent as much as at the knee, and the tail didn't drag along the ground.
Remounting dinosaurs is a difficult and costly job, and museums have been slow to catch up with the science. However, the Royal Ontario Museum is in the throes of a major renovation, which will include a dramatic new dinosaur gallery when it's finished. Now it's up to today's paleontologists to use the fossils to unlock the mysteries of the dinosaurs and mount them correctly for the first time.
And many of the major museums, including the Royal Ontario Museum here, the American Museum of Natural History, Field Museum in Chicago, many of these big institutions that we all know of are really just getting their dinosaur displays up to what we knew, but museums take a while to catch up because mounting things is a really difficult task. And so, you know, a lot of the major museums now are just catching up to what we found out 30 years ago.
And now, the 5-year-old who stood in awe at the feet of that 17-foot-tall Corythosaurus is part of the team charged with remounting that very dinosaur.
I think that looks good. That looks good to me because the footprint should overlap.
David Evans is now one of the world's leading experts on hadrosaurs, or duck-billed dinosaurs. It's why the ROM hired him to be one of its dinosaur curators, even though he's still in university finishing his PhD on the subject.
My interest in duck-billed dinosaurs sort of fell into my lap. It was given to me as a project at the Royal Tyrrell Museum when I was there as a summer student. And it was suggested to look at a particular duckbill skull and look at how this particular duckbill, Corythosaurus, grew. And from there, I got into the literature, and I got in looking at the fossil record of duckbills, particularly from Canada. And the one thing that sticks out in particular, basically in all facets of hadrosaurs, is their fossil record. Their fossil record is absolutely amazing. More specimens of hadrosaurs are known than most other dinosaurs, and these include fossils that range from embryonic remains, eggshells, nests, and complete articulated skulls and skeletons from juveniles through adults. And it's with this really unprecedented sample that you can gain unique insights into these dinosaurs' biology and the way they lived and died. Well, hadrosaurs, they evolved in the late Cretaceous period, somewhere around 100 million years ago. And they inhabited the river deltas and swampy lowlands and floodplains of North America and Asia. They were the most common herbivores in these late Cretaceous ecosystems, at least in North America and Asia. What sets hadrosaurs apart from closely related dinosaurs is their extremely complex dentition. They have dental batteries that are formed from hundreds of teeth, which are in the mouth at the same time, and these teeth grew continuously, and they formed a dental battery, which they used to process plant material much more efficiently than any other dinosaurs around at the time. And it's this likely key adaptation in their dentition and chewing mechanisms that really allowed them to take off in number. And once they spread out, they diversified quickly into a great range of forms, some of them that have very unique types of ornamentation on their skulls, which was used for social signaling and the like. But the real important thing in hadrosaur evolution was the development of these complex dentitions for processing plant material.
But the answer to the problem of the incorrectly mounted Corythosaurus lay not in its teeth, but in its hands. And it's in this high-security part of the building that we find a rare set of fossils that have proven to be an important piece of that paleontological puzzle.
Well, this is the hand of Parasaurolophus. It's a crested duck-billed dinosaur. And the first thing to notice about the hand in general is that it lacks a thumb. So this is the left hand, and this is my left hand, and you can see the area for the thumb, which you typically use for grasping, is completely gone, and it's actually lost in all hadrosaurs.
The hand has been one key to unlocking the mystery of the hadrosaur, specifically how it walked the Earth millions of years ago.
This here is the pinky finger, which is elongated. When you study the hand in animals that use the hand for grasping, the finger bones of the digits tend to be elongated. As you see here, the finger bones of duckbills are in fact very reduced. And two of the digits, digits 2 and 3, are capped with very small hoof-like unguals. And these would have been capped in life by a keratinous sheath and would have actually been hooves.
If the interpretation of the fossils is right, the hand is actually a foot, a finding that's only reinforced when paleontologists looked even closer at how the dinosaurs were standing.
It starts in the late 60s and the early 70s when there was a group of scientists that started to really think critically about how we know what we knew about dinosaurs and how they lived and how we viewed dinosaurs and how they stood and behaved. And they started to look critically at these old mounts. And what they realized when they looked at the anatomy is that, in the case of the hadrosaurs, virtually all specimens that had been found were preserved with a very straight backbone that was essentially horizontal to the legs.
These 75-million-year-old fossilized bones are part of the mounting evidence that's causing museums around the world to rebuild their collections.
It seems obvious in retrospect, absolutely. And that's just how science progresses. Sometimes you get things right and sometimes you get things wrong. And when people come back to that or realize the importance of these things that have been missed is completely arbitrary and contingent. You don't know when it's gonna happen. Getting the anatomy right is basically the first step of interpreting dinosaur paleobiology. Behind me is the skeleton of Albertasaurus, a large duck-billed dinosaur that lived about 70 million years ago. Unlike the Corythosaurus, which was mounted straight up in the old gallery, this skeleton has all 4 feet on the ground. When scientists were reconsidering the posture of duckbills and other dinosaurs in the late 60s and early 70s, they pointed to several key anatomical features of the backbone and the pelvis that suggested that they weren't as upright as previously thought. In special reference to the duckbills, the vertebral column was particularly important. Although they're not preserved on this specimen here, all duckbills have a series of ossified tendons or very stiff bony struts that would have covered the top of the backbone and ran from the middle of the tail all the way through the shoulders. And this would have made the tail region extremely stiff, and the upright posture in which the tail is dragging along the ground would have been impossible in life. The second piece of anatomy has to do with the structure of the hips. When the vertebral column is upright, the weight of the animal has to be carried across a very weak joint between the ilium, the upper hip blades, and a lower bone of the hips, the pubis. And it is unlikely that this joint could have supported the weight of the animal for long periods of time. When the vertebral column is horizontal, the animal carries the weight through the most robust portion of the pelvis, which is the iliac blade here. Now, if we have the vertebral column straight, as it's mounted here, this has effects on the position of the shoulder girdle and the arms. It brings the shoulders much lower than the level of the hips, which is very much different from the old Corythosaurus mounted in the gallery with the arms much higher than the hips. With the shoulder girdle much lower, this allows the arms to reach the ground and the hands, in fact, to touch the ground. And this explains the hooves on the bottoms of the hands. And the arms would have been used as they would have in life, which was for walking.
The findings are part of an ongoing dinosaur renaissance that's challenged the way we think about the prehistoric giants. But it doesn't just apply to the duck-billed dinosaurs. It also applies to Tyrannosaurus Rex, the quintessential dinosaur that people visualize towering overhead.
It was the norm in all the children's books. The hadrosaurs and the tyrannosaurs were standing with their backbones essentially upright in a sort of squatting position. And we look at them now and they look very slow and almost ridiculous. But that was the way that dinosaurs were thought of at the time. Very slow, dim-witted, uncoordinated. And the reconstructions that could have reverberated through the popular literature really reinforced that, and that came from the way that these skeletons were originally mounted. I mean, the T-Rex in the American Museum of Natural History, that first mount, it's absolutely iconic of that T-Rex with that tail dragging on the ground and the backbone essentially upright, and with the head in the rafters, of course. And those powerful images of T-Rex and the duckbills standing straight upright from thought of that way by almost a generation of scientists. I mean, that has some staying power. So a lot of the work on dinosaur postures and correcting how T-Rex stood and how the duckbills stood and getting those dragging tails off the ground That work, really stems from the work done in the 70s. But museums, many of the exhibits that are in museums have been there for decades. And museums right now are basically just trying to catch up to the huge body of knowledge that we've accumulated on dinosaurs in the last 30 years since the Dinosaur Renaissance.
And the Royal Ontario Museum is undergoing a renaissance of its own. As the museum counts down to the opening day of its new dinosaur exhibit, it's up to a team of highly specialized craftsmen to take the ROM's priceless collection of ancient bones and rebuild them. Reinterpreting dinosaur anatomy is a challenging task with much at stake. It's an image that's imprinted on the minds of millions by museums and the media. A Tyrannosaurus Rex towering ferociously on its hind legs. But it turns out T-Rex and other dinosaurs have been mounted incorrectly. This information is not new, but most exhibits have been slow to set the story straight. Now museums like the Royal Ontario Museum are on a mission to completely rebuild their collections, and that massive undertaking requires some help. Enter Research Casting International. Housed in a nondescript concrete building an hour south of Toronto, Ontario, it doesn't look like much from the outside. But inside is another universe.
Hi, my name is Peter May, and this is my company, Research Casting International. We're a small Canadian company based in Beamsville, Ontario, and we specialize in building dinosaurs for museums throughout the world. We build dinosaur skeletons like you see behind me. We mold, we cast. We want large skeletons, small skeletons, everything from the smallest Myosaur baby all the way up to the gigantic T-Rex attacking other skeletons and other animals. We've been in business since 1987. Over the years, we worked for pretty well every museum in the world on every continent. When we worked on the movie Jurassic Park, for instance, we did a lot there. And there, we had to sign a clause saying nobody could say anything about any of the work that was going on. And an awful lot of the major museums are like that as well. Because when they do open, it has to be brand new to the world. And here, we see it all probably for a year and a half ahead of time. And we know what's going to be seen. But, we do have to be discreet about it.
And the people at Research Casting International have their work cut out for them. Yet another dinosaur skeleton has arrived from the ROM in pieces, and now it's up to them to put it back together. It's a unique blend of art, science, and technology that gets the job done.
We have a staff of about 30 people, and they range in talent. We have people with master's degrees in fine arts. We have people with BAs and major in fine art. We have artists, we have sculptors, we have blacksmiths, metal workers. Our staff have been pretty well trained on the job. We just expect our employees to come in and have a good basic skill with their hands, to be able to use small hand tools, be comfortable around tools, building things, and have a good sense of how an animal moves. We've built probably over 250 skeletons. So if somebody has a pet and they watch their dog and how their dog moves and how it chases other animals and things like that, it helps them understand what our skeletons do and what the people in museums are looking for. Everything you see in our shop revolves around building dinosaurs. If it's a cast, if it's a mold, if it's original fossil material, if we're doing the preparation of the bone, if we're conserving the bone, if we're scanning the bone, digitally scanning it and printing it, everything we do here revolves around building dinosaurs.
For years, the Corythosaurus, or helmet-headed Hadrosaur, dominated the ROM. In fact, they made one of the wings extra high just to accommodate it. But scientists now know the dinosaur never actually stood that way. Now the pressure is on people at Research Casting International to get it right.
There's a certain amount of fear that goes into the job, and without the experience where we can have an employee putting the manus together, or the hand of a hadrosaur together for the very first time, and they've never done it before. So there's the fear of getting it wrong.
The biggest fear would be for anything to fall down or any of the bones to break. And of course, there's the more practical things like making sure that the mount is as realistic as possible, and that the dinosaur's posture fits what we know about that animal in terms of its anatomy, and it's as accurate an image as we can present to the public.
Just making sure that we have an anatomically correct mount, and that it's, you know, since they are doing brand new galleries at the ROM, they should be as current as the science is. And I think the challenge is just being correct on that side of things. There aren't really any unknowns that we haven't worked with in the past.
To piece it together, the same step-by-step process is followed for any collection of dinosaur fossils that come into the building.
Let me start at the beginning. When we start a project, the first thing we do is dismantle the skeleton. So we're at the museum, we take the whole skeleton apart, and we take the individual fossils, we package them up, we put them in our specimen cabinets. Their skeletons have been collected over time. Every specimen they have is unique. A lot of times the museums ask us to break the shipment up, so that we'll have half a skeleton in one truck, half a skeleton in another truck, so that if anything does happen to that truck, they're not going to lose everything. The Royal Ontario Museum, for instance, their collection was started probably back in the late 1800s. And dinosaur skeletons are fairly unique. And the collection they have there is probably one of the best collections in the world. And if they lose any of that, they're losing part of the world's history. So we have special cabinets. We have cabinets which have shock absorbers on it. We can strap a frame to the truck, and the cabinet will ride on an air ride system sort of thing. And it may seem an awful lot for a little bit of bone, but you have to remember these things are priceless. You know, you can't just go to the corner store and buy a Hadrosaur. Once they're at the shop, we unpack everything, document any damage that has occurred to the animals, to the individual bones of the animals. We take it upstairs to our conservation room where it's put into drawers. The drawers from our cabinets fit the drawers we have here, so we only handle the specimens once. We take them off exhibit, we'll put them in the drawers. From those drawers, go back into our cabinets. Then when it's time to clean and consolidate the skeleton, we take the individual bones out. We clean off the old consolidants. Historically, we're usually dealing with varnishes, shellacs, horse glues, old adhesives, which aren't very stable. You know, over the years, they crystallize, deteriorate, and things break. We take away as much as we can of the old materials. Then we introduce new materials, safe consolidants, safe adhesives, which have been time-tested, and time-tested probably from the 60s till now. It's not very long. And if the bone breaks, it's okay, because it's under control. Like, we have it in our lab, so if an adhesive breaks, if a joint breaks and we have the bone opening, it's okay, because then it helps us introduce more consolidant into the actual fossil. Plus, what we can do is glue it back together with a much better adhesive, a more modern adhesive.
Once the fossils are cleaned, they start building the armatures. The custom-made steel pieces will hold and connect the fossils together.
Then we'll start to build the skeleton. And there we build, if it's real fossil material, then we build individual armatures for every piece of bone throughout the whole skeleton. There's many different ways of mounting a skeleton. What we try to do is bring the art of the blacksmith into play with the skeleton. So we have very, very good blacksmiths here, and they have a very good sense of doing their craft, bending their steel, and making it become an organic part of the skeleton itself, because it has to be mounted. You can mount it just a piece of steel with a bone on it, and we've seen some very, very crude mounts where they haven't taken advantage of the skill of the hominid with the beauty of the specimen or something like that. You know, so it's a combination of the art and the craft of us as human beings, combined with the beauty of the organic shapes of the skeleton and the bones themselves. And we've made it so that all the individual bones can be removed for study. If they want to remove any of the bones for study, they're able to do that. Once the armatures are built, then the skeleton's assembled.
You know, you look at this here, and I was doing what the picture says, so I'm trying to soften what's happening there in the neck.
Usually what happens, the exhibit designers give us drawings of how they'd like the skeletons mounted. We stick as close as we can to that, because those drawings usually come from the exhibit designers in conjunction with the paleontologists at the museum. And they dictate what positioning they want and what sort of feel that they want to have in their galleries.
How was this mounted before?
It was mounted with a vertebra column almost vertical. So it stood, I think, about 18 feet high. The tail was bent with it on the ground.
So what we're doing now, we're changing the positioning completely. So now, is this the way they believe they should be standing now?
Yeah, with the vertebral column more or less horizontal, the tail straight and off the ground. And with the vertebral column doing that dive at the shoulders to bring the shoulder girdle down and the front limbs close to the ground, where they would have been used in walking.
We're working today probably with one of the brightest minds dealing with the Lambeosaurians, and he's helping us go through all of this. And he's looked at the past science, and he's introducing the new science.
I'm not doing anything unique that's different from any paleontologist. I'm certainly looking at a lot of these old hadrosaur fossils that haven't been looked at in several decades in a completely new light and with different techniques and methodologies to shed light on how they evolved. So this whole armature will come off, so you could basically get rid of all the metal?
Yeah.
I'm not guiding the technicians per se, but they've come to me with a lot of different questions when they don't see the bones going together right, or when they, for instance, put two bones together and they see something that looks odd to them. They'll come to me with their questions, and I'll pop in every now and again to see the process as it goes along, to double check their work and what they've been doing, and again to make sure that everything makes sense in terms of how that animal is put together and how it's presented to the public in the new galleries. And so it's definitely made me think about how these things really do go together and how they would have moved and functioned as animals, and how we know what we supposedly know. It's often difficult for paleontologists who work with very large animals to get a sense of just how the bones go together, because a femur of a duckbill, for instance, is over 1 meter long and will weigh tens of kilograms, and it's very difficult to manipulate. So working with the research casting crew and looking at how these skeletons actually go together, fit together, and how the dinosaur would have likely stood and walked and moved in real life has definitely been a highlight of the process. It's just very interesting to see these big bones actually go together. It's something that is a difficult thing to do when you have bones on a table, especially of dinosaurs. There's a little bit of room for interpretation, and ultimately, I answer to myself, and so I try to make the decisions based on the facts that I have at hand and consulting the literature and try to make sure everything checks up. But some of the details are certainly up for debate and up for interpretation, and that's just the nature of science.
They are the stars of many museums. Giant, ferocious-looking beasts from a prehistoric era. But the image most of us have of them has been all wrong. Using modern methodologies and current science, the ROM's David Evans and a team of dinosaur reconstruction experts have been working to get it right. Now, months after the remounting work began, the Corythosaurus, one of the stars of the Royal Ontario Museum's dinosaur collection, is taking its final shape.
So we start mounting here, and then if we have any questions, like if the animal can't go in that pose, we'll let them know and we'll come out and discuss it, and if we have any question on articulation, if there's something unique about the specimen, we stay in contact with the museum, with the paleontologist at the museum. If it's a brand new find, for instance, usually they don't have all the information. So what we're doing is doing the best we can with what we've got and what they've got. Sometimes it's a best guess scenario, but it's usually pretty good.
Sometimes there's compromises that you have to make, and certainly there are some things that I would like to see done that are, they're just not feasible. There's been a lot of study that's gone on before me, and there's a lot of science that allows us to put these skeletons back together and be reasonably confident that we're pretty close.
Ultimately, it comes down to experience and intuition when trying to figure out where all the bones will go.
It's very important that we're anatomically correct. You know, like as far as the mechanics of the vertebra, the mechanics of the legs, and the articulation of the bones, we have to be as accurate as we can. An awful lot of the time, what happens with the bone, it becomes distorted over time. Like, these bones have been buried underground for tens of millions of years. And what we have to do is fit them back together. And if there's any distortion in the articular surface at the joint, it's hard to get it right. Then how does the animal walk? You know, like, what's it doing? So then there's trackways. So we look at trackways and say, you know, like the published papers on trackways and things like that. We look at that and see how this animal walked, and then how fast was it going? How fast can it go? You know, can you put it in an attack position if it's a carnivore? Was it a scavenger, or did it attack? Was it a hunter? You know, and all those things come together. So, and that affects the posture of the animal. And in the old days, when they mounted a lot of skeletons, they had them upright, tails on the ground. You do find trackways with a tail drag, but it doesn't mean all these animals were in that posture all the time. So now the main way of articulating most skeletons is horizontal, carrying the weight on their legs and the body balancing. Aesthetically, I think it is critical. You know, like, the mount has to be a very good mount. You know, like, if you walk into a museum and you have two legs planted and one leg's an inch off the deck and the other one's 4 inches off the deck, it just doesn't look good. What happens in doing work for museums, the work is studied. You'll have people go to a museum and they'll sit in a chair and they'll look at a specimen for hours. And they'll sit there, and if they see something wrong, they spot it. You know, it's not like a movie where it's fleeting, you know, like the bone's on upside down, or this isn't right, or that isn't right. So we have to be very, very careful that we're as tight as we can be and as accurate as we can be. Most paleontologists are pretty polite. If we do something wrong, they don't usually tell us right away. They'll wait a couple of years and they'll say, "Did you know you're doing that wrong?" Because it does happen. You know, it still does happen. Like, we have 30 employees here putting things together, you know, and every once in a while, like, something will slip through the crack and go out that's a little bit off, not quite right. But we stand by our work and we'll go back and fix it. So, yeah, and if more information does come out, then we'll call the museum or wherever the exhibit is on display.
Still, the new Corythosaurus mount won't be complete until the head is in place. Despite all the science and technology that went into it, it's now a work of art.
That their legs would have to be very, very close to their bodies in order to do that.
For Evans, the posture is everything. It's a window into the past, offering one of the few insights into the dinosaurs' prehistoric world.
I mean, if you look at how we reconstruct hadrosaurs nowadays compared to how the Rom Corythosaurus was mounted, or how a lot of the famous public images were, you know, before the 1950s, the animal looks, you know, essentially completely different. Rather than being sort of a slow-moving, awkward, upright animal, it's down, and it looks much more active and much more agile.
But Evans says the remounting of dinosaurs in general reflects a larger dinosaur renaissance that's changing the way we understand them, especially at museums.
Changing these dinosaur postures was really on the crest of a wave of a series of other scientific discoveries that were overturning some of these major ways that we thought about dinosaurs, and these old views of dinosaurs as slow and stupid and reptile-like. These old ideas were that dinosaurs, in fact, didn't have small brains for their body size, that their brains were as large as would be expected if it was a reptile or a crocodile of that body size, or even higher. Certainly some of the smaller carnivorous dinosaurs that are closely related to birds had much larger brains than would be expected for reptiles of equivalent size. And that brings us to another major paradigm shift that came about in the 70s, is the resurrection of the idea that birds are the direct descendants of dinosaurs. And that we know today with the spectacular finds of feathered dinosaurs in China, And we know that, nowadays that birds may in fact be a better model for a lot of dinosaurs in terms of their biology and growth rates.
The image that emerges of dinosaurs is that they're more complicated and interesting than ever before.
They're not as dumb or as cold-blooded or as we thought they were. And, we're still doing a lot of work on, how they lived. But they were much more exciting animals than they were thought of in the 1920s and 30s and 40s. Really, there's a lot of work going on in trying to figure out how dinosaurs stood and moved right now, and they're bringing in computer animation techniques, basically digitizing the bones and putting them in a computer and testing how these animals may or may not have moved and coming up with biomechanical models of how dinosaurs could have stood. So that's why when I say that, we're closer than we were in the 50s, there's still a lot to learn about how, dinosaurs stood and moved, and there's a lot of work yet to be done.
If the Hadrosaur and its story is anything to go by, our understanding of dinosaurs is constantly evolving. For Peter May, that only means more work.
I think a lot of it is just it's so unique. We'll cast an animal up, and then we have to mount it, and then you're looking at this cast of a skeleton, or in some cases, the actual fossil material, and you just naturally think, what was this thing? Like when this lived, you're looking, I guess dinosaurs went extinct 65 million years ago. They were probably one of the most successful animals ever in the history of the planet. And then you just look at this T-Rex, for instance, and here's the largest carnivore ever, just staring at you, with the big teeth and the big claws and the big legs, and besides the little Hadrosaur, which could have been an easy meal for it. And your mind just thinks. I think all day long, you're just wondering, how this thing walked, what it did. You're sticking a rib on, is this what the rib cage was like? What did it eat? You're putting the ribs together. We find a lot of fossils which have scars, injuries to it, and then you just think, wow, like it broke its foot and it healed. It was bitten here. You can see a lot of evidence of things that have happened to the skeletons. And I think it just adds to the day's work. It's not hard to come to work. Like every day, there's always something new. It's exciting, and there's still a lot more out there. A lot more dinosaurs to be discovered, a lot more work to do, and a lot of exhibits out there that need updating, and collections that need fixing.
Back at the Royal Ontario Museum, there are many other rare dinosaur bones that have never been seen by the public, at least not yet. As the rebuilding of the Royal Ontario Museum's dinosaur skeletons continues off-site at Research Casting International, construction on the museum's dramatic new face is in full swing. Of the 7 new galleries that will eventually call this new building home, the Age of Dinosaurs Gallery promises to be the most dramatic and quite different from its predecessor that existed for over 7 decades in the adjacent building. For David Evans, it's a chance to witness the rebirth of the same Hadrosaur skeleton that made such an impression on him as a young boy. Not only will dinosaurs like the Corythosaurus and the Albertasaurus look totally different, but much of the ROM's collection of rare fossils will also be on display for the first time. Until then, these priceless prehistoric fossils remain under wraps in parts of the museum that only people with security clearance ever get to see. For example, the old Queen's Park wing that closed to the public in 2004 is one area where bigger specimens currently hang out.
Come on in. Welcome to the Jurassic parking lot. This is a sort of a surrealistic space of the old gallery that's been dedicated to the temporary storage of some of the specimens that will eventually end up in the new gallery space. This is it, the ROM's most famous dinosaur, Parasaurolophus, still partially encased in its original sandstone matrix. It's the tubular crest of this duck-billed dinosaur that makes it so famous. Although widely recognized to kids and dinosaur enthusiasts all over the world, there's only a handful of specimens of this particular type of duck-billed dinosaur, and this is the best one. This is actually the original dinosaur gallery here at the ROM, and it were these ceilings that were built extra tall to accommodate the upright Corythosaurus. A prominent figure in this space right now, although temporarily, is Tyrannosaurus Rex. T-Rex, like all other tyrannosaurs, makes a lot more sense with a horizontal backbone. The giant head is counterbalanced by the large tail. He will figure prominently in the new gallery within the crystal, which is just behind these walls here. It'll be this head here that'll be peering out of the crystal gallery, looking menacingly down at passersby on the street. A close relative of Tyrannosaurus Rex, Albertasaurus, was also mounted upright in the old galleries. Not anymore. This is the vertebrate paleontology collections here at the ROM. This is the storeroom where all the vertebrate fossils are housed that aren't currently on display, and it's a part of the museum that very few members of the general public actually get to see. This room houses thousands of different fossil bones from many different groups of animals, including mammals, fish, birds, and of course dinosaurs. And the ROM is very well known for its dinosaur collection. Here we have a skeleton of a velociraptor-like dinosaur, a small theropod from the Cretaceous of Montana. This is Bambiraptor, and it's about 75 million years old. Below Bambiraptor is a skeleton of a horned dinosaur. This is the skull of a dinosaur closely related to Triceratops from the late Cretaceous of Alberta. The ROM collections themselves are very strong in dinosaurs from Alberta, and as a part of that collection, it's extremely strong in duck-billed dinosaurs. And like this one here, this is a skull of Lambeosaurus, a crested duck-billed dinosaur about 75 million years old. Hadrosaurs are one of the most interesting groups of dinosaurs to study simply because their fossil record is so complete and we have such a large sample size where you can get insights into their biology that we simply can't get into other dinosaur groups that simply don't have as good quality of a fossil record. The Lambeosaurus skulls illustrate the growth and development of the cranial crest, which is so characteristic of the Lambeosaurian dinosaurs, including Corythosaurus, as well as Parasaurolophus and Lambeosaurus. Here is a small juvenile, and here is the crest, and you can see that it's very small relative to the crest in the subadult here, and the much larger crest in the adult Lambeosaurus. This crest becomes more prominent with age and reaches its full expression only at the largest sizes. And this suggests that the showy crests were used in some sort of social function, such as species identification or attracting a mate. The ROM has one of the best skeletons of the duck-billed dinosaur Myosaurus, which is well known for its eggs and nests that have been found in late Cretaceous of Montana. This specimen here is a cast of one of the nestlings. The specimen at the ROM is a full-size adult, and in the new galleries, this small nestling will contrast the large adult skeleton that we'll have on display. So this is the size of a Myosaurus just after hatching from its egg. We also have a very wide range of other dinosaurs: Ankylosaurs, the armored dinosaurs, Tyrannosaurs, which were the carnivores of the time, and this is sort of the most fearful carnivore of the late Cretaceous. This is a cast of the skull of Tyrannosaurus Rex. You wouldn't want to be looking down its snout in that when it was alive. You can see the teeth here are about 6 inches long, and it's grinning with them. This is the largest carnivore that we know of, at least in North America, and one of the largest terrestrial carnivores, or land-dwelling carnivores, that ever lived. Some kind of interesting features about the skull, other than the teeth, are the position of the orbits. This is the eye here, and when you look down the snout, you can see the orbits are actually much wider than the snout itself, which would have given Tyrannosaurus some stereoscopic vision, which would have helped in the hunt. This is the actual size. You can see a human would have been a morsel. So in this compact storage here is where many of the smaller specimens are kept. They're kept in drawers with multiple specimens per drawer, and there's literally thousands of dinosaur fossils in this aisle and in the collection here. You can see in different drawers, they're arranged by taxonomic group, by type of animal. Here we have drawers with Ankylosaur scutes. These are the dermal armor that protected the back and sides of the armored dinosaurs, the Ankylosaurs. So we can continue down the aisles. We pass into the Hadrosaur section. So here's a series of isolated hand and toe bones from Hadrosaurs. And the carnivorous dinosaurs are kept in this area here. Some of the more interesting specimens, of course, include the teeth. And looking at the teeth allows us to tell what the different types of animals and dinosaurs ate. And this is a tooth of Albertasaurus, again, from the late Cretaceous of Alberta, somewhere around 75 million years ago. You can see it's about 3 inches long. He was the T-Rex of his time, Albertasaurus. T-Rex lived at the very end of the age of dinosaurs, and Albertasaurus lived somewhat earlier. And this is a single tooth, and you can see here along this edge is a series of very fine serrations. They would have acted just like the serrations on a steak knife to help the tooth cut through meat, and they would have also strengthened the tooth as it bit down on its prey. One of the exciting things about the new gallery is that many of the specimens that will be on display will be original mounted fossil bone. One thing to note is that some of the skeletons will be cast material, particularly when the specimens are too delicate or of too much research value to be mounted and put on display. So in a case in the terms of the ROM gallery is the Myosaurus skeleton. Here is some of the arm bones from the Myosaura, and here are some of the vertebrae. When you look at these bones closely, you can actually see that there's two colors. The dark gray color is the fossil bone itself, and because fossils are seldom perfect, sometimes parts of them have to be sculpted or restored, and that's this white, which is plaster. These original fossils are then casted, and exact replicas of them are made, and these are then put into the mount and then will be on display in the gallery. The ROM's Myosaurus skeleton, the cast of it, is currently with Research Casting International. It's been built for a while, but it's there being tweaked for the new gallery.
Research Casting International's client list also includes the Canadian Museum of Nature in Ottawa, Ontario. Theirs is one of the oldest museum buildings in Canada, and it too is undergoing a huge renovation to update its galleries and provide new spaces for its collections. Phase 1 of the project, unveiled in October 2006, includes a brand new dinosaur exhibit, the Talisman Energy Fossil Gallery, located in the Victoria Memorial Museum building. Like the ROM, the gallery curators and designers went to great effort to ensure the art of mounting dinosaurs was current with the science of the day.
Well, the old exhibit was a much more of an old school exhibit. Some of the science was older, and certainly some of the ways that we've posed the dinosaurs, the thinking on that has changed. Unlike the old exhibition, which tried to give a sense of the entire run of geological time, we've taken a fairly narrow slice right at about the time that the dinosaurs disappeared and the time that mammals took over. But the ones that we've created as three-dimensional mounts are by and large in what the most current thinking is in terms of their posture, in terms of their stance. There's no guarantee that these are absolutely the final poses, but they do reflect what scientists are telling us now. For instance, T-Rex used to be thought of as a fairly sluggish, slow-moving animal with its tail dragging on the ground and its nose in the air. Well, now it's got its tail out directly behind him and its head out horizontally almost in front of him. Most museums now display T-Rex and the large theropods in that kind of pose. But it's not just T-Rex and the other theropods, it's other animals too. And there's a similar debate that's gone on with the ceratopsian dinosaurs and whether they had their legs really quite directly underneath them and whether they could run real quick or whether they had the sprawl position and that they were low, sluggish kind of animals. We changed our pose for one of them. And that debate, I don't think, has been resolved yet. I think that's an ongoing debate. So we may change some of the poses again in the future. There's a lot of preparation work that has to go into them to find them, to start with, to get them out of the rock, to prepare them, to mount them, to put them in a position where you can comfortably put them out on exhibition. That takes a lot of time. It takes some very particular expertise, and of course it takes some money as well. I think every new museum that opens a fossil exhibition creates a new model, a new step forward, and everybody else tries to learn from what everyone else has done. And we're just one step along the way. But right now, I think we've got probably the most elegant, most comprehensive dinosaur gallery that's out there. The ROM has certainly got a new exhibition coming on. That exhibition, I'm sure, will be different. I mean, they will build on what we've done and what they've seen in other new exhibitions around the world. They have a different collection, and that will certainly drive the exhibition in a different way. They have a different building. That will, you know, put some constraints on what they can do and give them some opportunities as well. So it's hard to say. I mean, I suspect they'll take a different thematic approach as well. However, I'd be surprised if they didn't come here and take a look and see what we've done.
The Michael Lee Chin crystal, still under construction, strikes a stunning contrast to the Royal Ontario Museum's old heritage architecture. It's destined to be a new landmark for the city of Toronto after its scheduled opening later this year. It is part of an ambitious redevelopment and expansion that will finally allow the museum to put its major collections on permanent display, including its impressive collection of dinosaur specimens. The huge skeletal mounts and casts we've seen will dominate the new exhibit in this large, dynamic space and will be visible from many points inside and outside the new crystal. But the work is far from over. There are still many more dinosaurs to take apart and put back together. And even then, new fossils or findings may emerge that could fundamentally change the way we think about dinosaurs once again.
I think that we have it closer to the truth. I think that there's still a lot of work to go, you know, in terms of knowing how dinosaurs stood and how they moved is, you know, very difficult. We have their footprints, but we don't have any we don't have living dinosaurs to watch move. And so when you just look at their skeletons alone, and even skeletons and footprints, you know, how was the leg held? Was it straighter or was it more bent? Some of these questions we don't know the answers to yet. Sure, we're closer than we were in the 40s and 50s and the 60s, but it's something that we're still working towards even now.